Good evening. Welcome to the Sunnyvale City Council Candidate Forum. I'm Linda Davis from the League of Women Voters, and I'll be moderating the forum this evening. You'll be hearing from the three candidates in the August 16th special election for City Council Seat 4. They're John Cordes, Larry Klein, and Stephen Williams. This election is being held to fill a vacancy on the City Council created when a council member resigned in the spring. Sunnyvale City Charter requires such a vacancy to be filled by a vote of the people at a special election. The timing of the resignation plus the detailed rules in the charter disallowed the special election from being combined with either the June or the November elections already scheduled. That's why we're having this special election in August. The candidate that gets the most votes in August will take office in mid-September and serve on the council in Seat 4 for about 4 months until January 10th, when that current term expires. The occupant of Council Seat 4 for the next 4-year term will be decided in the November election. So if any of tonight's candidates are seeking a 4-year term on the City Council, they'll have to run again for the November election. The League of Women Voters of Cupertino Sunnyvale is sponsoring tonight's forum to help voters make an informed choice. The League is committed to never supporting or opposing political parties or candidates. In order to ensure that tonight's forum is fair and impartial, we require League members who are centrally involved with the planning or execution of this forum to refrain from personally engaging in any campaign activity for City Council candidates. The questions for tonight's forum are coming from the public. We had received a few questions from the public in advance of tonight, but mostly we're soliciting questions from you, the audience. So some League members will be circulating with index cards that you can write questions on. 1 question per card. And any question you write will be put to all the candidates. We have a question sorting team in the other room that will be reviewing your questions and rewriting them for legibility, perhaps combining, consolidating them, and then they'll bring them up to me. And we'll go through as many of your questions as time allows. Candidates have agreed to a set of ground rules for the forum, which include time limits of 60 seconds or 90 seconds. Most of the questions, they will get 90 seconds to answer. A League timer is seated at the front of the room to give them some visual signals to help them pace their answers. The forum is being recorded and aired live on Comcast Channel 15. The ground rules discourage candidates from using forum recordings for campaign purposes. We also encourage the audience not to record the forum because we want it to be shown in its entirety. We'll tell you how to access the forum video at the end of the program tonight. Finally, we ask the audience to refrain from displays of support or opposition during the forum and to hold your applause until the end. We'll turn now our attention to the candidates. Thank you all thank you for running, for taking the time out of your lives to run for office in our city, and for participating in our forum tonight. Your speaking order for the opening question has been determined by a random drawing and will be, in the order you're seated, Mr. Cordes, Mr. Klein, and then Mr. Williams. You'll each have just 60 seconds to respond to the opening question, which is simply, Mr. Cordes, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good evening. My name is John Cordes, and I'm hoping to be your future council member. I attended college at the United States Coast Guard Academy, where I learned to honor duty, and I would consider it my duty and honor to be your next council member. I'm an active leader in my church, and I have a moral obligation to make the world a better place for everyone, especially the disadvantaged. I've been preparing to be your future council member for years, as my experience and background will show. I was a 20-year engineering manager at National Semiconductor. I've been a resident of Sunnyvale for 18 years. I've been neighborhood chair for the Snail neighborhood for 3 years. and I'm currently on a Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission Vice Chair. I've had decades of experience as a volunteer leader in addition to my work experience. I'm a graduate of Sunnyvale Leadership Academy, which allowed us to focus on learning city operations. I've been a leader of Sunnyvale Cool and a lifelong environmental activist and community activist, and I'm currently a member of the Energize Sunnyvale team trying to help Sunnyvale win $5 million.
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Larry Klein. I moved here in 1989, about two months before the earthquake hit. And when my wife and I purchased our home in the Heritage District, it was about 15 years ago, I got involved in the downtown when the vision for the first downtown town center was being defined. And when there were 3 open seats on the Sunnyvale Planning Commission, I applied and ultimately was appointed. Since then, I've served 9 years on the Planning Commission, as well as multiple years on many nonprofits and city committees. So the Historical Society for 6 years, and the Charles Street Garden Board and other committees and commissions within the city. I feel that I have the wealth of experience in city government in order to best fit as far as best fit the council needs, and I have the vision to immediately hit the ground running and fill that empty seat. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Williams. I'm glad to be here. I'm an innovator, a technologist, a grandfather. I live to solve hard problems and to work to make the world a better place, which I interpret fairly generally. So I'm always looking for interesting opportunities to improve things, fix gaps, and innovate where I can. I'm a curious, lifelong learner. I have a master's in computer science from American University in Washington, D.C., CISSP security certification, and I'm a member of FBI's InfraGuard that guards the infrastructure of the U.S. I have been a founder, director, tech lead, CTO, and consultant in various roles for over 30 years in a mostly technical management security career, and I worked 8 years in the federal government learning quite a bit about government and reviewing large programs and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, for the first question from the public, what 3 issues are of greatest current importance for Sunnyvale, and what should be done to address them? And we'll start with Mr. Klein.
Yes, there are basically 3 issues that are critical to Sunnyvale, one of which is finishing the downtown. The second thing is affordable housing, and the third thing is, of course, traffic and that issue of managing growth within the city. So as far as finishing the downtown, it's critical for the fiscal operation of our city in order to have enough money in the general fund in order to finish the operations, as well as finish the heart and soul of what's needed in the community. So I have a plan to basically work with the community, with the developer, and I was part of the initial vision which helped define what the downtown was, and I can carry that vision forward. As far as affordable housing, I have multiple plans as far as adding to the accessory living units, units within the city, the below market rate plan, as far as increasing the below market rate units within the city, as well as adding housing at the transit centers, and also smaller housing in order to make 400 and 500 square foot units available to a larger number of the people. And finally, as far as traffic is concerned, I hear that every day as far as an issue within the city, and I understand how to deal with the traffic issues. We should have expand a shuttle type service, which is going to be a temporary service that's going to start next year, as well as looking at traffic at an overall city standpoint and do a vision as far as the city traffic plan is concerned. Thank you.
So I divide the opportunities for improvement for Sunnyvale into 3 main categories. Transport, where we have spotty public transportation, lack of safe bike arteries, and serious congestion. Livability, which does include downtown and also includes stable and affordable housing, and what I think of as community vibrant spaces, which is what I think the downtown can be and should aspire to be in various ways. And then additionally, I think there are a lot of opportunities for open, responsive government, for more clarity, more currency in the city plans, so that when you look things up, you're not looking at a 2006 plan when a lot of events have gone by, and just understanding decisions and the rationale behind them. Across those three main areas, I have 22 mostly innovative suggestions. A few of them are things that a number of people are interested in. A number of those items, though, quite a few of them are things that don't seem to have been brought up seriously or really investigated. And so some of those might be to work on a free bus rapid transit to tie together some of the areas of the city, especially the new industrial areas that are growing on the north side with the Caltrain and VTA and the city center. Another big opportunity, I think, is to create a real bike highway, which I'm going to be detailing my thinking there pretty soon. Thanks.
Hi. My three issues that I think are the most important in Sunnyvale right now is affordable housing crisis, reducing traffic, which has multiple implications, a more sustainable future for Sunnyvale. So I'll go over my platform for those. Under affordable housing and protecting residents, I'm a candidate in favor of rent stabilization for both the mobile home parks and for apartment dwellers. Mountain Views just has a ballot measure on their ballot in November, and I really would think Sunnyvale needs to get there. Unfortunately, our city council pushed that off till next year right now. I want to increase development fees so we have more money to pay for more affordable housing, and I want to zone for more housing. And I want to increase the funding for housing for the homeless. Under reducing traffic, we definitely need a shuttle service. I think Sunnyvale should create a transportation committee to focus on how we do that, because right now we just abdicate that responsibility to VTA. We need more mixed-use housing where people can get to places when they want to by walking and biking. And we need better transit options. I would like to see a lot more bike paths and walking choices for people, especially for children to get to school. I'd like to spend a lot more focus on safe routes to school. Creating a sustainable future, reducing traffic. Again, greenhouse gases from traffic is our #1 source in Sunnyvale. So anything we do to reduce traffic will not only reduce our greenhouse gases, but will also make our air cleaner, which will help us deal with these spare the air days that are unhealthy for everyone. I want to be more aggressive in getting to renewable energy, which is going to happen pretty well in Sunnyvale. I'm really happy with how that's going. We need to promote greener energy buildings faster, and we need to reduce the reliance on imported water. So right now, half of Sunnyvale's water is imported from the Delta. I don't think that's sustainable.
Thank you. Second question is about Butcher's Corner. What is your opinion of the proposed Butcher's Corner project? In particular, what do you think of allowing 5 to 7 stories for buildings on Fremont Avenue next to residential 1 to 2 story houses? And what about all the traffic that will be added to the neighborhood off Fremont? And we'll start with Mr. Williams.
Thank you. In general, I'm in favor of higher density and higher building. I'm sensitive, though, in neighborhoods where you have an existing feel of the neighborhood and it's going to affect the view of a large amount of the homes and yards, et cetera. So it's something that needs to be mitigated. I think depending on exactly the geometry and the distance and the foliage, et cetera, there might be opportunities to make it work. It just depends on the details there. The traffic issue, I think, generally needs to be examined with the additional shuttle service in mind. I think the VTA bus system that we have now doesn't serve Sunnyvale that well. And a number of these building versus traffic issues, I think, can be solved by drastically improving the range, reliability, periodicity, and quality of that busing system.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Cordes.
With regard to the Butcher Corners project, it has morphed numerous times already, so there's no firm plan as far as I know right now. The medical building is being considered for purchase. On the more general topic of that location, I think it's an appropriate place for dense development with retail on the ground floor because it's part of our key corridor there. But I don't think it should be improved until we solve the traffic problems. So Kingfisher intersections, Code F, the Fremont exit, Fremont intersection, El Camino, we have to fix those traffic problems before any large developments should be allowed to go forward there. I think sightline drawings should be part of the process going forward so that people can review what this is going to look like from their neighborhood. The El Camino corridor needs better transit options and biking and walking options. So again, so people don't have to drive as much, and it makes it easier for people to get in and out of that particular property. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been to multiple of the public outreach meetings for the citizens to meet with the developer, and while the latest project vision is better than it was at one point, there are still definitely issues as far as the project is concerned. Conceivably, the setbacks from El Camino are still a big issue as far as the project. Definitely going up 6 stories or 7 stories isn't visually what people want to see. You know, it's like we have that with the Courtyard Marriott, and it's been kind of a touchstone within the community already. As far as the vision of that project, I'm happy to see that it's been reduced, and I'm hoping that it'll ultimately be reduced a little bit more before we see the final plans. And as far as traffic is concerned, definitely there is an issue from the project. Going out onto Fremont and then having to make a U-turn if people want to go basically east or north or south is a definite issue from the project. And I've encouraged the developer that they really should have an exit that goes out onto El Camino. Otherwise, you ultimately have kind of a one-way route out of that project. From an overall standpoint, they have reduced some of the size of the duplexes to the west of the project to fit better with the community to the west. And so the developer has taken steps, but there's still issues and still ways to go. And I'm hoping that the final vision will be much better. Thank you.
For the next question, I'm going to combine 2 questions. Try to combine 2 questions, and you'll have 90 seconds. Incidentally, if I don't say the time limit, timer and candidates, you have 90 seconds. It's on the short ones that I'll make that clear. So the topics are mobile homes and rent control, and I'm going to try to combine these 2 issues into one. And the first respondent will be John Cordes. More and more mobile home land is being redeveloped. Many people in the remaining homes are seeing extraordinarily large rent increases that make it difficult or impossible for them to stay. What would you do to ensure that mobile homes contribute to affordable housing in Sunnyvale? And are you in favor of rent control in Sunnyvale, and if so, in what form? Okay, feel free to ask me if you need a reminder, but.
I'm fine. This is a topic I'm near and dear to my heart. I have friends that live in 2 mobile home parks, and I've been dealing with this issue for a long time. As a Snail neighborhood chair, we're right next to the Fair Oaks mobile home park, and they came to us with this problem years ago. So I've been studying this and paying attention to it for a while now, and some friends of mine are affected. That's one of the reasons I'm come out as being in favor of rent stabilization for the mobile home parks, and I'm in favor of it being done by the council instead of by ballot, because then the council can tweak it and change it as it needs to be changed. One of the problems that doing it by ballot would be, A, you've got to convince all of Sunnyvale to vote for it, and which puts all the burden on the residents. And B, once it's done by ballot, it's really hard to change because you have to require another public vote to overturn it. Sunnyvale's done a good job of requiring that 400 acres stay mobile home parks out of the 418 that we have right now. So we've done a good job of saying that even if people buy the parks, which is what happened last year, they're not allowed to redevelop them as anything else. So from that point, the residents are protected. What they're not protected by is against rapid rent increases. So that's why we need to pass rent stabilization so that the residents, and half of them in the Plaza del Rey mobile home park are on fixed income. We have to protect these people so that they can get a rent increase that they can live with. And the same will go true with other mobile home parks. And I'm really concerned that Sunnyvale needs to get proactive in this. Thank you.
Next speaker will be Mr. Williams. I'm using a rotation order for the speaking orders that will get us through all the combos. So you'll kind of get the hang of it as we go.
So I live in North Sunnyvale, and this is also important to me and a lot of my friends and constituents that I've talked to. I think that we are going to need some type of rent stabilization or some creative alternative that works even better than that and perhaps avoid some of the pitfalls. I agree that we should have some action immediately rather than just putting it off to the next year. I understand the probability of long-term success is different between the city council passing something and a ballot measure, but there's no reason we can't investigate something with the city council and queue up a ballot measure, perhaps based on what we learn in that process. I think that it's important to really realize that this kind of situation is not just like renting an apartment where you can easily move out, et cetera. This is really pitting two different types of equity against each other, and right now, the more vulnerable side of that has very little protection, right? And we need to recognize that in this kind of balanced situation that should be balanced, it's unbalanced right now, and at the moment it appears that many people have effectively lost a significant amount of their equity and put them in a pretty difficult position. So I think that needs to be a key part of the thinking and the rationale and looking for creative options to solve this going forward.
Yes, thank you. When the Carlisle Group purchased Plaza del Rey Mobile Home Park last year, I had friends who reached out to me and were worried about their mobile home park converting over. And I told them, basically the 400-acre rule from a city standpoint kept that land safe from that standpoint, but there was nothing from a rent stabilization standpoint to make sure that the owner didn't raise the rents. And ultimately, at the beginning of the year, they raised the rent 7.5%. And I was at the community outreach meeting when the mayor actually visited the neighbors and was there for an afternoon to hear their concerns. And a lot of this goes back to fear and uncertainty from the residents, because the current owner won't do leases for the existing residents like many of the mobile home parks within the city. So there's a lot of mobile home parks that don't have this issue because they have good owners at the end of the day. And that's the main focus and the main problem here is that fear and uncertainty. So I do support some sort of rent stabilization for the mobile home parks, but in looking at the codes and how other cities have done it, I do worry about how it's implemented, and I do worry about the will of the council and how quickly this would move forward from a study issue standpoint and all that. And I pulled aside multiple residents after the last meeting with the city and told them that the best way to move forward with this is put it on the ballot and make sure that the people are happy with it. Thank you.
The first respondent for the next question will be Mr. Williams, and this is a 60-second question. It's about the Public Lands Act. Sunnyvale residents have gathered support for a Public Lands Act that is on the November ballot, will be on our November ballot. How do you stand on the Public Land Act?
I appreciate the sentiment, and I actually like the sentiment of protecting what Sunnyvale owns and making sure that we're careful about when we sell it, lease it, and otherwise encumber it. As I looked, and my first reaction when I read it was, yeah, that seems reasonable. But as I learned more and talked to more people and dug into the history a little bit more, I understand that the wording's poor, and just the general idea, the general mechanism would slow down the actions of the city council enough to really hamper the type of negotiations and the type of deal making that the city council needs to be able to do to operate efficiently. I also understand that in the past land has been sold and then later bought back. It's not necessarily as permanent and as one-sided as you might think. So I would vote against it for those reasons.
Mr. Klein.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I also am not supportive of the Public Lands Act. In going through the proposition in detail, the biggest issue was the wording as far as the proposition is concerned. It's mixing a terminology as far as leasing and for sale, and as far as you go through it in detail, there are questions on whether or not would it be applicable to the lease of land from Charles Street Garden to the museum to other operations within the city. Conceivably, I might be for a measure that would only apply to the sale of land, because those transactions normally take a long time and could conceivably be sequenced with a spring or November ballot measure. But as far as the way this is written, I couldn't support it. I think it would be controversial and would slow down the operation of council, and I don't think it's the best in the overall vision of what the city needs. Thank you.
To me, the Sunnyvale Public Lands Act genesis was bad communication by the city. The city needs to be much more engaged in talking with residents about what they want and notifying about things that are going to affect them importantly like this. So that's one of the things I would change is I'm running on a platform of increasing community engagement because I want the city to do a much better job of engaging with neighbors. That said, for the reasons that the other two candidates have mentioned already, I also do not support the Sunnyvale Public Lands Act. It's a poorly written piece of legislation. It would be open to many kinds of lawsuits. The city does, I think it's 8 on average, or 18 leases a year. So, and if we require a 2-year approval cycle to do this, and even if we did it, it would cost $70,000 for every lease to get it on the budget, on the ballot. So, for numerous reasons, I could not support the Sunnyvale Public Lands Act.
The next question will be 90 seconds, back to 90 seconds, and Mr. Klein will be the first respondent. And again, I'm going to try to combine 2 questions because I have a lot of them here. Related issues, but both big issues. What can be done, traffic and transit, I'm combining. What can be done to improve traffic problems in Sunnyvale? And how would you make it easier for people to travel to work via transit? Mr. Klein.
Sure. As far as dealing with the traffic problems, that's one of my main goals is we need to look at an overall city evaluation of traffic. So one of the issues with traffic is, first, we don't know how many destination trips and how many origination trips actually are from the city. There's a lot of traffic that is actually just passing through the city, and that's not really caught. And there are actually programs now that can actually evaluate how much traffic is actually passing through your city and not starting or ending here. So that's one thing, just so that we can study the issue and have a better vision of what's there. And then the second thing is encouraging alternative transportation to help solve the problem. So there's a Peary Park shuttle program that will go in place next year, and that 2-year program will be basically something for both the residents and for the people working in Peary Park to have a shuttle program that would basically supply that walkable mile. The main reason people don't take public transportation is it's not walkable, and a shuttle service that would cover a wider area would actually help them and encourage people to actually use public transportation. Beyond that, we need to encourage more walkable communities, more public transportation, more bike lanes, and a more of a trail-like experience. I was on the Stevens Creek Trail Citizens Group as far as extending that trail experience farther into Cupertino, and I'm hoping that these will help fix those problems.
And the next respondent is Mr. Cordes.
I made reducing traffic to be the #1 priority for me from both an environmental and a quality of life point of view. So it's the most important issue for me. And I've studied it for quite a while. One of the things I want to do is increase the traffic demand management requirements on businesses so they have to allow fewer solo drivers. This is particularly for the big office parks. The Peary Park standard right now is 30%, but the Apple building is 40%, and I don't know why we would accept 30% into Peary Park. Right now, the Peary Park draft environmental impact report says the number of vehicle miles traveled to go in there, if it's developed the way it's currently drafted, would double. I don't think anybody here wants the number of cars going in and out of Peary Park to double. We need better and more safe routes to schools and more crossing guards, which is funded out of the public safety budget. I really think more parents would like to have the alternative to let their kids bicycle or walk to schools, and that solves a lot of traffic problems in the early morning when people are frantically trying to get their children to school. So we need safe and consistent alternatives for parents to be able to get to school. We need more mixed-use housing where there's housing above retail. And again, one of the things I want to do to reduce the traffic problems in Sunnyvale is redevelop Peary Park to be at least 50% housing instead of the current proposal of keeping it all industrial. We need more housing more than anything else in Sunnyvale, and we don't need more office parks. Better transit options, as Larry stated, I'm very supportive of the Peary Park shuttle. It would actually come to my neighborhood to pick up people, and they would really appreciate that loop of being able to get downtown with a free shuttle. So I think that'd be wonderful. But we need a lot more biking paths and walking paths. We need to make it possible for everybody.
So if you look at Sunnyvale, we have several islands that are, while we have some sort of lateral bike paths and some transit between them, between those islands we have very little linkage. So if you look at North Sunnyvale, if you look at basically VTA, you can get to Mountain View and San Jose much easier than downtown Sunnyvale, and the same thing with Caltrain and other areas. So really we need to tie those together in a couple different ways, and so I have two main ways to do that. So I also suggest creating a transportation authority, maybe SunTran, and the free bus rapid transit is something that we could start negotiating day one with some of the large corporate clients and other stakeholders to put some flexible loops in place for that and then begin optimizing it. In addition to studying the traffic, I think we should work on creating an interactive simulation, perhaps something that we can all at least look at, if not toy with, and experiment with different options. The big thing that I think really should be begin to be worked on is what I call a bicycle highway. It's basically on the eastern span, the eastern drainage trail, basically going from Baylands to Fremont Street. That needs to be redeveloped anyway for drainage and for flood protection, and I think that we really need to take this opportunity to build out a good bicycle highway and potentially some other additional uses for that space. And I think I'm out of time.
Next question, first respondent will be Mr. Cordes. City government is experiencing quite a bit of mission drift in the study issues process. How would you prevent the expansion or redefining of study issues by staff? How would you move leadership toward more council-driven policy matters, I think, versus staff-initiated policy making? More council-driven policy making and less staff-driven policy making. What would you do about that, or what do you think about it?
I've been a participant in the study issue process for a few years now. I really kind of like the way that as a commissioner, I'm allowed to submit study issues in addition to the city council members being able to create and submit their own study issues. And they all get grouped together, and then early in the year in January, we do a ranking process to decide which are the ones that the city council thinks is most important. So I don't see this opportunity for a lot of policy being coming from the staff on to that level as far as picking what the study issues are. Where I start to see the policy issues coming from staff is when the recommendations come out after they, try and come up with a solution to the policy issue, to this issue. So I think that we could make the process better by having more frequent updates from the staff on how they're thinking to solve the problem, what their proposed solution is going to be once the study issue is approved. That should make it easier for the council to make sure that the work that staff's doing to come up with a solution or the answer to the study issue question is in line with what the council member wants, or council members want. Thanks.
Mr. Klein.
Yes. Definitely, as far as my 9 years on the Planning Commission, I have seen somewhat of a mission drift from a staff standpoint. Study issues are proposed and kind of itemized as far as what a different commission wants or what council wants, and ultimately, when the study issue comes back, only some of those items were covered. So, recently I proposed a relook at the solar shading issues within the city, and that included as well usage as well as covering the rooftop of the house or the residence next to yours. And when it ultimately came to the Planning Commission, the concept of usage, mainly driven by kind of golf lands issue, wasn't really covered from a staff standpoint. And I was a little bit taken aback, and I've seen this more and more recently, and I think the best way is for council to have more of a touchstone, to basically direct the city manager to talk to staff to make sure that they are meeting all the long-term goals of the different study issues. Definitely additional things can come up past what the initial vision of the study item was, but there is an ongoing issue that conceivably staff has missed items, and that shouldn't happen. This was probably the last chance to study solar shading within the city, because after what was ultimately being suggested and recommended to City Council, this issue will probably never be evaluated again, and I'm hoping that the council and staff can work closer together in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
So I think in general, from what I understand and from what I've seen, we need a more open, incremental, more modernized process similar to what you might find in a lot of commercial situations where you have a little bit more interim results, interim status, something that can be tracked all the way through the system in terms of the motivations, basically what's sometimes called a traceability matrix of how did this get started, what are the stakeholders, what's important, and some assurance that the important items are being looked at by the right people, thought about, and being addressed. And as part of this, we should have a more open and flexible system. Sure, we want to make sure that we're not overloading people, that we're not generating a lot of noise, but there are techniques to both communication systems and ways of working together that can do that kind of thing efficiently. One of the things I've heard from public safety and others in some of what they've written is that there are people who feel that they have important ideas and observations and insight that are not really being listened to and don't feel that they're having the impact that they might be able to have just because of the structure of the organizations. So that's something that we really should improve.
The next question is about water, and we'll give you 60 seconds for this one. What are your plans or what plans or actions would you take to improve the water supply for Sunnyvale? And the question asker wants you to go beyond talking about conservation, feeling like the citizens are doing a pretty good job there. Water in Sunnyvale, first respondent, Mr. Klein.
Yes, as far as my plans to actually reduce water consumption, definitely the Sunnyvale citizens have done their part as far as conserving during the drought, but we ultimately need to utilize the purple pipe, the recycled water, better. Right now, 10% of the water, 10% of our potable water is being used on landscaping, mainly in business parks. And that, to me, is unconscionable. You know, it's like the concept that water that could be, used by the residents in their daily lives is actually just going into the ground. And yes, it's ultimately they get a better rate, the businesses get a better rate for that, but we should definitely utilize, expand the purple pipe into Peary Park and all the different business parks. We should make sure that it goes on to public lands as quickly as possible from a service standpoint. And ultimately, we're in a relatively good place because we get, 54% of our water from the SFPUC and 40% from the Santa Clara Water District. But we still need to make more measures. Thank you.
So Sunnyvale has really a very high quality of water for this area. So one of my the thing that would be most important to me would be to maintain that level of quality in whatever we do. And additionally, I think the Great Water Purple Pipe expansion makes a lot of sense. The rules for the business parks really ought to be examined in terms of doing more xeriscape, more low water usage, more of a good green feel while not wasting a ton of water. I think also there might be some possible ways that we can reclaim some of that water, depending on how things are built. Perhaps having drainage fields underneath areas that we're able to reclaim and really directly recycle some of that irrigation water. So I think that would be an important step.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez?
Water's been a passion of mine for a long time as an environmental advocate. And I have, in addition to the things that Larry's talked about, there's a lot more we can do on top of that. One of the things is we can require dual plumbing in new construction so that the toilets and other things that don't require potable water can be used recycled water for those purposes. We can take water cleanliness to the next level by going to tertiary systems. For example, Santa Clara and San Jose have just built their new advanced water treatment plant where you can drink the water that comes out of that. We could take the water from the Sunnyvale sewage treatment plant that's being upgraded to go from 2 million gallons a day to 10 million gallons a day and ship it down there and have a new source of fresh drinking water right here without being dependent on the Delta. We need to capture more water from storm runoff. We need to capture it and let it sink into the ground instead of channeling it out to the bay to recharge our local aquifers. And need to encourage more residents to capture more water on their own property.
The next question will go first to Mr. Williams, and it's about funding for infrastructure and other things. The city is adding a great deal of new business space and new housing space. Who do you think should pay for new transportation, school space, water and sewer upgrades, etc., and how will you suggest these monies be collected?
So impact fees are good for certain aspects of this. So in terms of the new housing, new transportation, direct impacts, and some of the very predictable parts of that. For transportation, I think there are a lot of options to be very creative with allowing companies to do direct, extremely efficient solutions for managing how many of their employees are driving, providing bus and shuttle service, possibly doing some creative partnerships with both, could be the bike trails, it could be Uber and Lyft and that kind of thing. We have a lot of gaps to fill there, and as soon as you not only don't, you have to also not only make things walkable, but also make sure that they're available at a wide range of hours, not just a couple hours at rush hour. And I think that's something that working with the corporations and other sort of big producers of a lot of transient traffic like hotels and other meeting spaces, if we're able to get them to work together, that would make a big impact. Thanks.
Mr. Cordes.
The city has a real challenge on its hand with trying to collect enough funds to fund infrastructure. Fortunately, we were blessed with a lot of things that were built in the 70s, but they are starting to wear out now. For example, the $300 million we need to replace our sewage treatment plant. So expect costs and fees to go up, unfortunately. I think the new businesses have to pay their fair share. One of the things I really enjoyed reading was the Nexus report, which showed what it really costs to provide services to new businesses, new residential, new commercial. It's on the order of $60 to $80 a square foot. Sunnyvale, for the first time, passed fees of $17 a square foot, and I think those should be dramatically raised. Palo Alto's fees are $30 a square foot, so that's where the money should come from, at least part of it. The other parts are going to have to come from how do we figure out other ways of doing funding, since Prop 13 limits us so much on what we can do on the property tax side. We've been kind of band-aiding that solution with sales tax measures. I'm hoping a lot when this downtown finishes getting developed that we should get another $2 million a year in sales tax in the city. But we've got to be constantly on the lookout for trying to find new ways to fund redevelopment. The bond measure that the county is putting on the November ballot for affordable housing, for example, it's going to cost about $12.66 per $100,000 of assessed value. That's how we're going to fund more affordable housing, one of the ways we're going to do that. So we have to look for all these creative ways to fund new developments and the changes we need in Sunnyvale.
Yes, thank you. As far as funding for infrastructure, that is mainly a responsibility of City Council, and working with the 20-year plan, making sure that the services and the infrastructure are being planned for as far as when things are ultimately redeveloped and redone is critical from a long-term vision. So the vision is an important as far as your City Council members are concerned. As far as where the funds come from, the city already takes quite a few funds from developers as they do projects. That being said, one of the issues or one of the questions was funding for schools. Well, schools isn't really funded by the city. You know, the school district is run completely separate from the city, and so there's not much from a city standpoint, from a council member standpoint, that can really be done. but it is imperative that the council look at the long-term vision of how the sewers, how the water, how the roads are being done. You know, definitely there are traffic fees continually being taken on a project-by-project basis. Housing mitigation, housing fees, park fees, sense of place fees. All these are being utilized in different ways in order to help improve the city in the long run. And as far as looking at other measures, you know, conceivably increasing those fees as we look at what's needed from the city is critical, but it's the imperative of planning ahead, and that's what's critical for a city member to be doing. Thank you.
The next question will first go to Mr. Cordes. How would you improve ease of bike and pedestrian movement on city streets, especially near retail and commercial venues, or for easy access to transit centers? $60 seconds.
I've served on the Sunnyvale's Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, and so this is an area where I've been focusing a lot of my time and attention. I've learned a lot. We definitely need to expand primarily through what's considered a Class 4 cycleway or protected bikeway, the ability from anybody from the age of 8 to 80 to be able to get around by bicycle and walking. So I'd like to see the city start to devote a lot more of its transportation fund, particularly from the traffic impact fees, instead of building more roads or improving road structures, to providing ways for alternative ways for people to get around. One of the things we passed or proposed to the city council and they accepted was a Vision Zero plan this year. So that's to look at every time a person is seriously hurt, either with a collision or a death, and figure out how we re-engineer that intersection to make it safer for everybody. So we've got a lot to do to figure out how to make all of our routes, you know, starting with schools and then heading toward the transit centers and the commercial centers, safe for anybody from the age of 8 to 80. And we'll have to take some roadway away to do that, either from parking or from making lanes narrower.
Mr. Williams?
So, as I said, tying the city together with a bicycle highway, I think, is a crucial and important opportunity that we have. There's this avenue that is, this area that is really available to be developed and leverage not only for a bikeway, but potentially for some range of parking and for things like pedicabs that could provide some interesting, healthy employment, and also provide another way for people to get between areas of the city without driving on the main arteries, and potentially in ways that are very convenient and very available. I think that whole project has the possibility of having a variety of creative funding possibilities. So not only potentially charging for parking, say stadium parking on the days that there are games, for neighborhood parking, potentially reserving spots, but also some other types of sponsorship, advertising, things like that. Thank you.
Yes, definitely biking within the city on the bike lanes isn't very safe at times. And you know, you look at like Mary, where you have bike lanes, but you have so many driveways in and out where people are backing in or pulling in. And that in itself makes it difficult for a lot of people, either young or old, of differing abilities to actually bike within the city. So the more Class 1 trails that we have, Stevens Creek-like trail extending, so opening Stevens Creek farther to Fremont opens up 22 acres of parkland, but it also creates a trail experience. The east and west channels creating more of a trail experience where you're completely separate from cars. But the city's also doing other things. They have a trial program that's going to be done on Fremont to put pylons between the bike lanes and the cars, so that there's actually a buffer, that there's actually a physical buffer there to make it safer for people that are biking along those lanes. And if that works, conceivably expanding that to a wider portion of the city makes total sense. Thank you.
For this next question, 60 seconds, but frankly, I think you may not need the full 60 seconds, so feel free to stop short of that. So the first respondent will be Mr. Williams. I'm just going to keep the second part of the question to keep it short. How much money do you plan to spend on this special election, just this special election, and where does that money come from?
I'm spending very little, and I'm trying to do this, I am doing this very efficiently. I'm primarily going to send detailed email. I have a few flyers here, and I'm funding it myself. It's a very minimal amount of money. I made the decision to join this effort late. I didn't know who else was running, and for the 4-month span, it didn't make sense to me to raise and spend a lot of money on this. So I'm doing it pretty lean, so it'll be less than $1,000 altogether.
Mr. Klein?
Yes, ultimately, I'll probably raise around $15,000 to $20,000. It was more than I ever thought when I first kicked off this campaign. I worked at multiple nonprofits, and I wish I had been able to raise that money from a nonprofit standpoint. So that money is mainly coming from the citizens of Sunnyvale. I've gotten a little bit of money from different organizations, a few $1,000s, but the vast majority is from the citizens and from my own pocketbook. And I'm now a bigger proponent for public financed elections than ever before. So my wife keeps asking me to stop asking our friends for money, and I hope that running for the November election will be a little bit cheaper. Thank you.
Hi, I've made it a public declaration that I'm not accepting any campaign contributions from developers. I think we have a trust issue with a lot of residents with the current city council because of how much money did flow in the last election. So I want to make clear that I've made a commitment never to accept for this election any contributions from developers. That said, I'm expecting to spend, I don't know, somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. One of my advantages is that I'm retired, so I can walk every day, and I have been walking every day. I've already knocked on over 3,000 doors and talking to hundreds of Sunnyvale residents. I think I'll hit another couple thousand doors before election day is over. So I don't think I'll be spending much more than that. I've committed $5,000 of my own money, and I've raised a little bit over somewhere over $3,000 from individual contributions from friends and neighbors, and a couple of environmental PACs. So that's my funding sources so far, and I don't expect I'll be getting much more money going forward, but I don't think I need it. I mean, I can print 2,000 door hangers for about $500. Thank you.
So I'm afraid that's all the time we have for the audience questions. We did have some more here, and I'm sure the question team has more in the other room that they quit bringing me. So if your question did not get asked, you can feel free to stay afterwards. The candidates will be around some, and you can talk to them individually. We're going to finish up with 1 minute from each candidate to a simple closing, give them some time for some closing remarks. And we're going to start with Mr. Klein. What do you most want voters to remember about you as they make their decision in the August election?
Sure. My name is Larry Klein. I've been active in the community for the last 15 years, and what Sunnyvale needs is a leader with experience in city government and someone who can immediately fill the vacant seat on city council. I've been active on the Planning Commission for 9 years, on the Historical Society Board for 6 years, Charles Street Garden, other commissions and committees, and it's that wealth of experience that's important as far as filling that city council seat. I have a vision and an action plan to make sure that I'm trying to improve the quality of life for the city of Sunnyvale and its residents. I feel that from my standpoint, that I understand the people within the community. I have endorsements from past council members, from current council members, and a lot of community leaders. And to me, that's critical in order to network within the community and get things done. And I hope that you'll vote for me for city council. Thank you.
Mr. Cortez?
I think what you'll remember most about me from this evening is my passion for protecting the residents of Sunnyvale and for protecting the environment. Those are two of my lifelong goals and ambitions. I agree Sunnyvale needs someone with a lot of leadership skills, and I've demonstrated that with decades of leadership, both in the environmental community and as a community leader and as a neighborhood leader. I really want to work to protect your quality of life. I think between my 18 years as a Sunnyvale resident, 4 years as a neighborhood leader in Sunnyvale. My experience on BPAC, you could saw how many questions were related to either the environment or bicycling and transit issues. Those are all right up my alley where I have the most expertise and the most passion to be your council member and work on those issues for you. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Williams. I think what you should know about me and what you should remember is that I'm very creative. I analyze problems. I see the possible solutions really outside of the box that can go beyond what's been done before to come up with innovative ways of really trying to keep everybody happy, to solve everything in the most optimal way possible. I tend to do the research and talk to all the people involved, all the stakeholders, and really try to understand empathetically what's going on, what's important, why haven't things been solved in the past, and really look towards how can we come together to solve things in a way that we can all agree is the best solution. And I have a long history of innovating and solving those kind of problems, and you can see a lot of my suggestions. Thank you.
So that concludes the forum. Please join me in a round of applause for the candidates. A video of tonight's forum will be available at youtube.com/KMVT, starting in 2 days on Thursday of this week on the 21st. You can also find out more about these candidates via the League of Women Voters portal to nonpartisan, unbiased, balanced election information, Voters Edge, and it should be being projected in a minute, votersedge.org. You can always, every election, use Voters Edge to find out about everything on your ballot. I want to thank the audience for coming tonight and providing us with ample questions. I'd also like to thank all of the volunteers from the League of Women Voters that made this event possible. If you'd like to know more about our organization or be notified about future election-related events and services that we provide, please check out the League table at the back of the room. There are also some feedback forms about where you can give us some feedback about this event, which we'd appreciate. So take one of those and drop it back in the box for us. There's also a table of information from the candidates at the back. Feel free to take any of that and stay and talk with the candidates. Again, thank you for coming. Good evening.